This is an oscillating multi-tool, and it is one of the most popular yet least understood DIY tools on the market. I say least understood because many people think that this is just a simple, questionably accurate tool that burns through expensive blades. So theirs ends up on a shelf or in a drawer when it could be out making your life a lot easier. In this video, I'll share some truly useful tips and tricks that will make this one of your favorite tools again. And I'll do it without wasting any time with fluff or filler. So let's get started. An oscillating tool is one of the safest power saws out there because it's designed specifically not to cut your skin. Early versions were used to remove casts from broken limbs because the micro vibration of the teeth will cut solid materials, but it will merely jiggle the surface of soft materials like your skin. Now that said, I wouldn't suggest intentionally pushing the blade into your flesh because some of the very sharp pointed teeth on certain blades may be able to scratch your skin, and if you push really hard, you may even get cut. But you're unlikely to be injured in any significant way from accidental contact with the blade. And as you will see in a future tip, you can use that knowledge to your advantage. One of the biggest game changers about this tool is its ability to make a plunge cut. But don't just stick the end on something like you're stabbing it with a knife. Instead, give yourself a little more control by starting with just the corner of the blade. This will help you penetrate the surface cleanly and precisely without skipping around and potentially marring the surface of your material. You may even use the corner to first create a shallow initial scoring cut. This will allow you to make small adjustments, steering the cut as you follow a line. And as you cut deeper, that angled blade will better eject the dust from the kerf, which will speed up the cut and keep the teeth cooler so they won't dull as quickly. Another way to better control your cut is to use a block of wood as a guide. This will not only serve as a straight edge, but it will also keep the tool plumb. A little sandpaper on the underside of the block will make it easier to hold in place as you work. Of course, just because you're holding a tool perpendicular to a surface doesn't mean the blade will cut straight into the wood. If it's dull or if you try to force it into the cut too aggressively, the blade may flex and drift. Let the tool do the work, especially when you're plunging into thick materials where it's difficult for the dust to come up and out of the kerf. Dust-clogged teeth will naturally cut more slowly, and if you try to force the tool forward faster than it wants to go, it'll drift inside the cut. Remember how I said the blade's unlikely to hurt you? Here's one way to use that to your advantage. Notice how I'm putting my fingers on the blade and the surface of the work to help guide it into the cut with more accuracy. Don't be afraid to touch the oscillating head. Now sometimes when I demonstrate this, I'll get comments about a potential for those micro vibrations to cause nerve damage. Well, unless you already have a medical condition, I doubt that's a serious concern for a DIYer who isn't doing this for hours every day. But I'm not a doctor, so if you're worried about it, talk to someone who is. Controlling your tool is always easier if you can see where you're trying to cut. Turning it upside down can sometimes get the bulky body out of your line of sight and make it easier to see your work. And don't be afraid to change the angle of the blade itself if that makes the cut more comfortable or it helps you get into a tight space. They're adjustable for a reason. You may notice that some plunge blades have scales on them to gauge the depth of your cut. They're handy at first, but they wear off pretty quickly. I find that a simple piece of tape works better because it's replaceable and it's easier to see than the marks on the blade. Some plunge blades have extended wings. These are designed to reduce heat and they can give you a little clearance inside the hole, but they also may be used to make curved cuts in thin materials, much like a jigsaw. You can even grind away some more material behind the wings to cut slightly tighter curves in slightly thicker materials. Wide blades will help you track a straight line better. My favorite straight cutting blade, though, is the half circle ones because you can make small corrections at the beginning of the cut as the apex of that arc penetrates the surface. And once in, they track straight with little effort and they work especially well for making large cutouts. They're also a great choice for cutting round objects like pipe because they won't slip off like a narrow straight blade might. Cutting metal with an oscillating multi-tool requires a slightly different technique. For one thing, speed is not your friend because harder materials generate more friction and heat is what kills your blade. Always turn the tool's speed down when you're cutting metal and use less force. Again, let the tool do the work. Don't rush it. Incidentally, the same can be true for wood. Use a slower tool speed and less pressure for hardwoods than you would for softwood like pine. If you find yourself burning through a lot of blades, you're probably being too aggressive or you're using too much speed. Use the right blade for the job. I'll put a link below this video to a multi-pack of blades I use. They're not from a sponsor, I buy them myself, but they're just decently priced and I like to have the variety of types on hand. We could make a whole video about different types of blades and how to use them, but instead let me just give you a quick rundown to help you make sense of them. Wood cutting blades feature larger teeth with more space between them to clear the sawdust from the kerf efficiently and to give you faster cuts with less heat buildup. Many plastics can also effectively be cut with wood blades. Some wood blades have extra long teeth, which feature what is called a triple grind. These are sometimes called Japanese-style blades, and they help clear the dust even more efficiently, so they'll cut even more quickly than standard wood teeth. The points of these blades are also ground at a shallower angle for greater durability and for a cleaner cut. In fact, that's my favorite type of blade for cutting wood. Metal cutting blades feature shorter teeth and more of them for taking tiny bites from the harder material. They also often have a slightly different shape to the tooth, which stands up better to metal. Bimetal blades are perhaps the most confusing for a lot of folks. The name means that they're made from two types of metal. The body is sometimes spring steel, so it can flex without developing cracks, while the thin strip at the cutting edge is a harder high-speed steel for greater durability. Keep in mind that not all two-piece blades are actually bimetal. Look at the label to be sure. If you're just cutting soft, non-ferrous metal like aluminum or copper, any metal cutting blade with fine teeth will do the job. But bimetal blades will also cut iron and steel. So while they're more expensive, they can cut more materials. That said, abrasive materials such as drywall and hardened materials such as screws will wreck most blades pretty quickly. That's where carbide teeth come in. Because of their greater durability and heat resistance, I think carbide tooth blades are the best all-purpose blades out there, not just for metal, but also for plastics and even some wood. The downside is that carbide tooth blades are not really designed for the most efficient cuts in wood. Their fine teeth sacrifice speed. So if I have a lot of wood to cut, especially thick boards, I still prefer the speed and efficiency of a proper wood cutting blade. To be clear, I'm speaking about blades with carbide teeth, like this one, not those that are coated with carbide chips, like this. These abrasive style blades, which are also available with diamond chips, are for tile and concrete, which is a rabbit hole we don't have time to go down in this video. I do want to briefly touch on scrapers. They're super handy for all sorts of things, but you don't need to buy them. Instead, just use one of your regular blades when it gets dull. I also know some of you will ask me about the sander attachments. I think the tight range of motion common to these tools make them poor power sanders. They're just slow and inefficient. But for some really tight spots, those little sanding heads can get you out of a bind. Just be careful if you're finish sanding wood, because they're notorious for leaving little pigtail swirls that show up when you put on your clear finish. Really, I think the sanding attachments are best suited for rougher work, like paint removal or removing rust or other burrs from metal, that sort of thing. If you do use a sander attachment, keep in mind that your random orbit sander discs usually wear out along the outside faster than they do in the center. So if you have a disc that's still got some grit in the middle, you can trim that out for your oscillating tool's sander pad. One more tip. When you're done with your tool, turn the blade backwards for storage. Now this might seem obvious to some, but it took me some time to figure this out. And I see a lot of folks that use these tools and then toss them in toolboxes and drawers with the blade forward, where it can cause damage or be damaged. Yes, you can just remove the blade for storage, but then you have two things to keep track of. I found a new wood finish and I'm really excited about it. It's called Clean Armor and it's unlike anything I have ever used before. It goes on easily, it contains no harmful VOCs, and it fully cures in just 2 minutes with the help of a UV light. And the protection is amazing. It even held up to harsh chemicals like acetone. If you're looking for a truly game-changing finish, you have to check out Clean Armor. I'll put a link below to a more comprehensive video I made about it. This is going to change everything.